So good morning, or good afternoon, wherever you are watching this presentation. I'm going to talk a little bit today about putting it all together and getting a job with the right resume. And I'll try to tell you when to change the slides, but hopefully I won't forget to do that. First off, I want to re-emphasize that you're talking about your future here. And too many times I've spoken with graduate students, and I say, when are you going to graduate? And they say, oh, in May, and that's 5 days away. I'm going, well, what have you done so far? She says, well, as soon as I graduate, I'm going to start looking for a job. Wrong idea. Start looking immediately. Your first year in school, before you graduate with your bachelor's, when you finish your master's, that's the time to start looking, because you need to set up a system of networks, you need to meet people, you need to put yourself out there, because you're going to spend the rest of your life doing this career. And it's important that you get the right job to start out. So what do you want to do? Excuse me, I'm a little bit tangled up here with the wires. The first thing you need to do is figure out something about yourself. So you need to know yourself. What is the job that you want to do? Some of the other presenters will talk about what they do in industry and how they interact every day with other scientists and with the public, and with their management, and with their company, and with their community. And all those things are very important. Decide what you want to do. Okay? So set a goal. This is what you want to do. Make a plan, and then implement the plan. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So at the bottom of the slide, it talks about you'll spend 5 to 10 years of your life, or 3 to 10 years of your life doing this. So get it right. Try to get it right the first time. So the next little thing here, if you click forward, is to set the goal for your job search. Where do you want to end up? And then, very, very important, you need to develop a 2-minute monologue that tells you about yourself. So if you're at a cocktail party or at the Industry Extension Social or some other event and somebody says, well, what do you do? Or what have you studied? Or tell me about yourself. You can go into this part of this monologue or the entire thing. It'll give you a brief history of your goals, where you're from, what you studied, and what you want to do. Very important for a monologue, and also very important that it matches closely with your resume. So next, you need to write the resume. We're going to talk about how you go about doing that a little bit later in this talk. And then, of course, gathering information and starting the networking is very, very important too. So the last part of the whole process, of course, is the interview and the offer, and I'm not really going to talk about that here. That's a whole other topic, and it takes a little bit longer than we have to work on that. So the next slide. Each step in the process depends on selling. You're going to sell yourself. And how do you go about selling yourself? You need to convince other people that you're the best candidate for the job. Now, I've counseled a few students, particularly from the Far East, Japan, China, and they have typically culturally a great deal of problem with this particular aspect. In America, people don't have any problem about bragging on themselves. But some cultures, it's very considered impolite to do that. If you're going to get a job in industry, particularly in the Western world, you need to be able to brag on yourself. That's different than lying or stretching the truth, but you have to be very forward. This is why I'm good. This is why you need me. So step number 2, what are my unique selling points? Every advertiser has got unique selling points, whether they're selling tires or cars or PhD candidates. You have to know what your unique selling points really are. So those are the features that set you apart from other products, other competitors for that job, and say, this is why you need to hire me. So the next slide, you have to set a goal for your resume. What is the goal? To sell the product. Your resume works in several places, and the next little bullet point here is to get the job, you must follow a sequence of steps, identify the opportunity, talk to the hiring manager, and nail that interview. And without doing those kinds of things, unless you're a water walker, as they say, you're not likely to get the job. So the next couple of bullet points here, your resume should summarize your skills, and it should demonstrate what you can do for your new employer. And there's a very big difference between demonstrating what you can do and listing your skills. You're not asked to say, I'm a computer expert, I'm a very versed or well-versed in fungal taxonomy. What you want to do is say, I have done this on the computer. I accomplished these tasks. I accomplished these things and delivered a result. That's what they're looking for in industry, not knowledge, not skills. We can teach knowledge, we can teach skills. You've already proven that you can learn. Now you have to prove that you can produce. Next slide. As with any product, you must deliver a complete package. So start out with your 2-minute monologue, have that memorized so you can start in the middle, start in the beginning, start near the end, alter a little bit every time you give it, but you know what you're going to say. And then you have to know what the application is all about, the application for the job we're talking about here. You have to have your resume, and then, of course, the interview and a follow-up letter. It's very important to get a follow-up letter. Nowadays, people can do this by email. That's perfectly all right, but you must make that contact with everybody that you talk to during the interview. Each of these things should deliver the same message. And what is your message? It's your unique selling points. So how do you decide what your unique selling points should be? And these can vary from job to job as you find different opportunities that you want to follow up on. So use the hiring criteria from the job announcements, and I'll have a example in the next slide or two. Ask your friends and your coworkers what you're good at, because the things they're looking for in industry are not necessarily publications. What they're looking for is people with innovative ideas. They're looking for drive. They're looking for enthusiasm. They're looking for ability to interact with other people. So your focus of your USP should be on your accomplishments. What have you done? Because if you did it before, you're likely to be able to do it again. It's different from I sat in a classroom and I got an A. You did something specific in your field. So when you get these USPs, you'll need examples of how you did that. You say, okay, I am one of the world leaders in understanding fusarium on wheat. So can you prove that? Can you back that up? Say, well, yeah, I published 2 papers on that. I've done all this other kinds of things. So you have examples of how you can follow up. So the next slide. What are the skills that are valued in industry? They're a little different, although pretty much the same within academia. So here's a list of competency criteria that I took from a job description, I guess. So, of course, you need technical knowledge, and that's one of the things you go to school for. You need communication skills. Can't emphasize that enough. Creativity and problem solving, that's what they're looking for, okay? Teamwork. Almost everybody is working in teams. Even when you're out in the field by yourself, you're working with a team. You're working with your project manager, your product manager back in the home office. You're working with your administrator. You're working with the university people that may be doing your trials. As you set all this stuff up, it's a team. And you need to get the team to work together, figure out what the goals are, and deliver results. That's teamwork. Okay? Interpersonal skills. I've met a few people in industry that don't have them, but typically those people get weeded out. And why? Because it goes back to teamwork. If people don't like working with you, then it's much more difficult to advance. And of course, the most important is the ability to deliver results. And as a new student coming out, this is probably also the most difficult one to not justify, but to, demonstrate. Thank you, Lorianne. So I got one person in my audience here because we're doing this over again, and the word was demonstrate. More difficult to demonstrate because you don't have 10 or 20 years of experience in the field. But you have had examples. And those examples may be, when I was in high school, I helped run the soda stand at the football games. I ordered the product. I made sure it was there. I organized the people that were going to do the selling. I balanced the books. I delivered results. That's an example. And it may not have much to do with science, but it does demonstrate teamwork. It demonstrates creativity. I went and For the first time, we surveyed the people that were out selling Coke or Pepsi. We got a better price. All those kinds of things are useful. Industry knowledge is helpful, and this is your networking that you start on when you first start in school. And then, of course, project management, which you probably will learn as you get a job later on. So you address these criteria to develop these 3 unique selling points. So here's an example of a job announcement. On the next slide here, I've highlighted in red some of the key things that you might zero in on when you look at your unique selling points. So high attention to detail for this particular job, effective team member, can you execute field trials? So you can give examples of this if you decide that, I'm really good at doing field trials. I'm really good at doing very high attention to detail kind of work because I can do GLP kinds of things. So the type of job you're after will determine which of these things you want to emphasize for your unique selling points. Okay, the next slide. Examples of USPs. So I'm good at technical writing, might be one. I've already published 6 papers, and I'm just now graduating with a master's degree. Excellent example. Okay. I've written many extension publications. Maybe you're out on a postdoc, and that's this kind of thing you've done. Next bullet, I'm world-class expert in my field. If you're graduating with a PhD, you ought to be one of the 10 most knowledgeable people in that area, in the whole world. Think about it. You've just spent probably 4 years of your life studying just this one problem. You've done, hopefully cutting-edge research in that area, and you should know about all the literature and about all the latest things going on in that field. You go down the street, whether it be Chicago, LA, New York, and you ask 1,000 people about that field, you'll know more about it than every one of those people. So you should be one of the top experts, and you need to sell that. Acknowledge it and sell it, because that's who you are. Okay, the next bullet point, I'm a leader. You can do all the way back to high school experiences, undergraduate and college. All of these things can help demonstrate your leadership skills. Next bullet point, creative thinker. If you were able to come up with a new or different way of doing something, different lab technique, it shows you're a creative thinker. Next bullet point, enjoy attention to detail, high quality work, those kinds of things you can demonstrate, very useful in some types of jobs, not so important in others. And the last one, be prepared to give at least 3 examples of each of your USPs. So you go to your interview, you might interview with 6 or 8 people, and they're all going to ask you the same questions. You don't want to use the same example with all 6 of them, because the guy says, well, what was an example? Did he ever do anything creative or different? And they says, oh, yeah, he discovered a new way to grow this pathogen. Anything else? Well, no, he told me about he discovered a new way to do this pathogen. So, come up with something different every time. And it doesn't have to be a global new breakthrough or Nobel Prize, but it should do something to show creative thinking. Okay, the next slide. Write your bullets as accomplishments and not as knowledge or skills. So we're going to go through this. You're going to, as you have your USPs, your unique selling points, you're going to write down little bullet points that help sell that product. So for instance, in a knowledge or format skill, you could say, I have extensive experience with field work. In the next bullet, I conducted 5 field trials. I grew inoculum, I sprayed plots, I gathered data. Which one is going to tell the person reading the resume what you can do? Obviously, the accomplishment format. Let's say you work with fungicide for pea infestans, strains on potato varieties, or you could say exact same thing, but it's formatted differently. You demonstrated a multivariate interaction between pea infestans and fungicides and potato variety. It tells more exactly what you did. What did you accomplish? You demonstrated something. It's different than you worked with. And the next one, Knowledge of computer, statistical programs, that's an easy one. Analyze data using SAS or Minitab or whatever you're using right now. So now we're finally, after all this, to the resume. So there are, like I always tell people, there are a lot of wrong ways to write a resume, but there is no one right way. So there's only one right way. I was going to say I've seen resumes where the person put perfume on the resume and did it in pink paper because their theory was this will gather attention and they'll open it up and look at it. They didn't quite get to the open up part, but they did get to look at it and dropped it in the circular file, which was the wastebasket. So there are many wrong ways to do it, and there's lots of right ways to do it too, but there's not really one right way. You can set it up in different formats, different ways to do it, but there are clearly things you don't want to do in your resume. So on the next slide here, I have your resume on the web, and a lot of times that's the only way you can apply for jobs in some instances nowadays. But I urge you strongly to go back in there and download your resume after you put it up. This is one I downloaded. It's how it came out. You can see the formatting is completely gone. It's really messed up. It's not going to make the impression that this job candidate wants to make. So right now this guy is saying I didn't get permission to use this because he put it on the web. Anything on the web is open to anybody and it never goes away. So keep that in mind. He's currently a postdoc research associate at a Texas Ag experiment station, and his job includes a high understanding of Phytophthora. Well, what does it mean to do a high understanding of this pathogen? Next line down, he's extremely familiar with the fungicides deployed for the control of potato late blight. Well, that's good, but that doesn't really tell me much about what it means either. Did he learn this all out of a book? Can he recommend things to growers? What's the accomplishment? What did he do? I think I've met this gentleman. He's much more skilled. He's much more sellable than what came across in this particular resume. And the idea is your resume should reflect your best qualities, not your worst. So we're also a little bit talking about how you format your USP'S. How do you format your unique selling points? This particular resume, I do not think does a very good job at that. Okay, you can read some of the other ones and ask yourself questions as you read these various statements on here. What does it really tell me about this guy? And you find out it doesn't tell you very much. There's so much latitude in what he writes that it could mean almost from next to nothing to a world-class expert. So here's one I got from Grace for a summer job application, and I think it sort of demonstrates two different ways. The first one, the summary of the qualifications. This is on the next slide. She completed her first year at the university, so she's only a sophomore when she writes this, okay? She has a thorough knowledge of university policies and procedures. Okay, now this is just a summary. She wanted a 3-month job to help. I think it was in Canada. I did get permission to use this one. Okay. She's ability to handle complex phone inquiries. Well, that tells you something. But you look at the one, employment history, administrative assistant, and down below that where I have the arrow, determine the eligibility of early admission in high school averages. So she was given, as a person out of high school with 1-year college in which she had this job, authority to give early admission to other students. Now, to me, that really says something. And that should be one of her unique selling points. She's very responsible. She does a good job, and people will trust her. And that should be number one, or very near the top of her resume. The rest of the stuff, proficient in Microsoft Word, for instance, is nice. Excellent customer service, doesn't tell you anything, but some of these other bullet points in the bottom part of the page are really quite good for her level of training. Okay, we're finally up to writing the resume. So first you want to make a list of your employment and schooling, and then put the dates. So this is kind of the easy part. Describe what you did in each of these, and we're talking all the way back to high school. Not only employment where you got paid, but employment that you did on a voluntary basis. List anything that shows competency, responsibility, authority, or initiative. So if you were a lifeguard, that's something you can put down there. You may not use it in your resume, but you want it there because you may get a good bullet point out of that experience that you can use later with a different job experience. So then you write 4 or 5 statements on the accomplishments of what you did. So if you were a lifeguard, your accomplishment might be, I supervised the pool and I kept all the kids from running around on the wet pool deck. It's something. And get that down in writing because that's how you start. When you get to real jobs, summer jobs that involve your profession, hopefully you've got something that is more targeted towards your accomplishment or towards the job you're trying to get. But all of these are going to be useful. So you consult the literature for the proper resume format. Don't be innovative. Don't decide that I'm going to have, half-inch wide margins because I can get a lot more information on there. These guys have been doing it a long time. They write books about it, and their recommendations are fairly standard and usually very good. So if you follow those established formats, you won't spring any surprises on the people that are trying to read the resume. They'll know what to expect. They'll get it when they expect it, and they'll be able to evaluate you instead of your format. Okay? Remember, the goal is to sell yourself. Your employer is looking to see if you fit into their organization, onto their team, and they're not looking for skills or knowledge. So if you did your PhD on fusarium, like I did, but they're looking for a guy that's working on botrytis, they can teach you about botrytis. But do you know how to do sterile technique? Can you think of new and innovative ways to test this material? Can you manipulate the biochemistry of the genes in that system like you did in the fusarium system? That's what they're looking for, not your knowledge on that specific topic. Okay. When you finish with your resume, remember, you're going to send this to complete strangers. If you're too embarrassed with what you've written down to show your own mother, then maybe you should rewrite your resume. You're putting it out there for everybody to see, and now's the time to go to your friends, people you trust, and say, take a look at it. What do you think? Does it sell me? Does it tell the story about me that I want it to say? Okay, the resume, no more than 2 pages, a couple of what do they call housekeeping things here. Publications can be on page 3. Put your references on a separate page. Typically, you don't send those in unless they're asked. Focus your resume. Each one of your job histories should focus on your unique selling points. So you did a lot of different things, but now you have a list of 5 bullet points for each job. You can pick from those 5 the ones that sell your unique selling points, the ones that emphasize your unique selling points. So provide examples of accomplishments for each job category that you choose to list. You don't have to list every job, but if you have long gaps in your employment history, you need some kind of an explanation for it. Well, I was in prison because, I got into trouble with whatever, so you probably don't want to put that on your resume. But if you don't have that kind of thing, then you want to put something else. And if you do, maybe you're going to talk about, well, when I was in prison, I did a job readiness course or something. I haven't been in prison, so I don't know what they do when they're in there. Use positive statements. My audience is laughing. So use positive statements in your resume. Don't use negative statements. Avoid the passive voice, and the best way to look for the passive voice is to look for the word to. If you want to say, this is what happened, this is what I did, and not to increase or to do or to, increase. Those can, use active voice. I did this. That's what you want to do, accomplishment. And then you want to tweak your resume. I say prepare a new resume for each application. But there's nothing wrong with word processing nowadays, with tweaking your resume, even your unique selling points, and the bullet points you pick out to support each job to fit that application. So if a guy's looking for somebody to do GLP trials, You might emphasize different things. They want somebody that can do field work or somebody that can work internationally, because they're looking for different things. You've done all these things, so you can change your resume for each job. Okay. There's lots of resources in the literature, books in the bookstore, on the web for word lists. So as best you can, avoid the word experience. And here's a list of just the A's. Part of the A's of, I pulled out from the web. So the next slide here, I don't know which one we're on, but before you send out your resume, check the spelling. And it's nothing worse than when you read somebody else's resume and they got spelling mistakes all the way through it. So once again, we're back to you're doing something that may impact your life for the next 3, 4, 5, 10, or maybe even 20 years. So, excuse me. I'm sorry about that. That was my phone. Check the spelling to see if it's right. Don't trust the computer spell checker. So after you've done the computer spell checker, read it. Actually sit down and read your resume. Have somebody else read it, because you may have read it so many times you don't see the mistakes anymore. Okay, send it as an email to yourself so that you know how it comes out on the other end. That sometimes can cause problems. People do, they'll run it through what do they call it, where it track changes, and they think they show the final version and they mail it out and it has all the changes still in there. So, because you forgot to accept all the changes. So those kinds of things happen, and they're very easy to check on, and they make a terrible impression if you forget to do them. Have several people proof and criticize your resume. Prepare examples and I'm sorry, the next very important bullet point is prepare examples for support each of the accomplishments or claims. Now, okay. And last, check your claims against the job announcement. So make sure that the kinds of things you're saying you can do match up with the kind of job that they're looking for. All right? Seems very elementary, but that's people that don't do that are using the same resume to send it out to 100 jobs. And people tell me, hey, look, I've sent my resume out to 200 different companies already. I'm going, why did you waste your time? Why did you waste your time? There's no way, unless you've been looking for 5 years, that you can send out that many resumes and have each one really tailored and fit to that job opening. And then I was going to say I was in the airport coming to this meeting, and Ann Landers had a letter from a reader, I guess, that said, my friend is very depressed. He came over after he had finished his resume and was lamenting how he had been turned down for another job. And it says, Ann, I was just appalled. He showed up in a jeans and T-shirt and had very offensive body odor. And she asked, did you go to the resume like that? He says, oh yeah, this is who I am. Well, it may be who you are, but and Ann Landers wrote back and said, tell him to dress up, tell him to take a bath, all right? Because when you go to an interview, you should be the best dressed one there. I'm not talking about wearing a ball gown or a tux, but if people at that industry wear a suit and tie, you should be wearing a suit and tie. If people in that industry are business casual, you want to be one step above business casual. And unless the person specifically says, we're all business casual, don't worry about wearing a suit, that's permission not to do it. But other than that, it shows that you are serious about getting that job. Okay, next slide. A little couple of summary slides here. Each step in the process depends on selling. You're the product. You must sell yourself. And your resume should explain why you're the best candidate for this job. And the last bullet point here, I think it's the last one, clearly highlight your unique selling points and then present yourself as a professional who can produce results. Producing results is key. Bring value to your future employer. That's why they're hiring you. Not for your knowledge, which is also somewhat important, but they want results, not for you to tell them what you've done afterwards. They want to take that knowledge you have and produce new results for them. So that's what you have to sell. So your resume is only part of the package. Start your job search right away, because part of that is keeping a record of the things you've done, the papers you've written, all the people you've met. That's part of the job search. Start today, and I wish you all the success. Thank you very much.